Hi, patrons. Good morning. It's Saturday morning, and I wanted to talk to you today about tension. This is our live session about writing mysteries, and I've been thinking a lot about tension lately, tension and conflict, and what the difference is. So basically, I just wanted to say that tension is the threat of something happening, and conflict is when that something is happening. But what keeps readers reading is tension. Tension can build to conflict, but without the tension, your readers aren't going to care about the conflict. Tension creates anticipation. Um, So, at the end of your story, there's going to be a big confrontation of some kind, whether it's weapons or wits, but there's going to be a big confrontation. Um, but for pages and pages and pages of your story, you need to build tension to keep readers interested to get to that conflict. If there's no tension, they aren't going to read that far. Um, So I think the easiest way to think about it is to build tension in every scene. Uh, and that way each scene provides just a little bit of conflict. So each scene has a dynamic, and it starts with a character, the main character of the scene, uh, entering in one emotional state, and they have an objective. There's something that they want to accomplish in that scene. So, for instance, in mystery, it could be they're meeting with the suspect and they want to get information, or maybe it's further along in the story and they want to get a confession. And then somewhere in the middle of the scene, there's some kind of conflict. There's something that keeps that main character from getting what they want. Um, and then the action that your character takes to deal with the conflict to try and achieve their objective. And then in the scene, the character may or may not get what they want. And then what comes out of their getting what they want or not getting what they want. Um, and then by the end of the scene, the reader's going to know whether they achieved their objective or they didn't. And then at the end of the scene is the character's emotional state at the end. If they achieve their objective, then they're confident, they're happy, they're on to the next thing. If they didn't achieve their objective, then they have to rethink everything. So, tension, the pivot point of tension in the scene is that turn when something changes and the objective isn't reached, their emotional state changes. Um, And that's why it's important in stories to alternate scenes between action and reaction scenes, because if their objective isn't achieved, then somehow there's a new tension as to how they're going to meet their objective. So what I tell writers is, um, you know the purpose of the scene, and it helps to write some kind of little short one sentence statement about what happens in the scene. So George wants Janine to confess, but he has the wrong suspect. So that could be your one sentence statement for a scene, and it tells you what's going to happen in the scene. Whereas a scene note like George interviews Janine doesn't tell you enough information. That's why I think that one sentence statement is so important. So as a writer, there are lots of elements, tension elements that you can choose so you don't feel repetitive in your story. Elements that you can use to build tension. And you want to vary these scene tension elements. So the idea is to kind of mix and match for each scene that you're writing. So, for example, is there internal conflict for the protagonist? Is there external? It could be one or the other or both. Um, is there something left unsaid between the characters in a scene? Um, does the reader know what's at stake for your main character in this scene? What is preventing the main character from reaching their objectives? Those are just examples of tension elements. So you want to create hooks at the beginning of the scene and the end of the scene. So this is like each scene is like a little mini story. So you want to start late and leave early in your scene. Um, You want to use your character's emotional change from the beginning to the end of the scene to create tension. And you want to make sure that the reader knows at the beginning what their emotional state is and at the end what their emotional state is so they feel that difference. Um, and then one last thing about building tension is you want to raise the stakes as your story progresses. You want to raise the stakes of each scene so things become much more difficult for your main character um, as you head toward the end of the story. When the results of the scene are crucial, your reader can't help but want to know more. So I came up with this little tension formula, and I don't know if any of you are writing, but thought this might help you. Um, 3 elements. The reader must care about the character. So you want to build empathy for the character. It's the cornerstone of tension. If the reader doesn't care about the character, there's no tension. They won't care. They probably just put down your book, as a matter of fact. You want to have consequences for what happens in the scene. The reader needs to know what the consequences are if your main character doesn't achieve their objective. And most importantly, the third element is that each conflict leads to more tension. So each obstacle with known consequences leads to more questions. And this is especially true if your character doesn't achieve their objective. Now they have to go back to the drawing board, figure out what they're going to do next and how they're going to achieve their objective. Okay, that's what I wanted to share today. But I think if you just remember that tension is the threat of something happening and conflict is that thing happening. It's happening now. But tension is what keeps readers going in your story, if that makes sense. All right. Well, thank you so much for your support. It means so much to me. And I'm very excited. I'm just about finished with The Grain Merchant. I have a date, March 6th, to send the manuscript off to the editor. So I'm very excited about that. So thank you once again.